In a previous video, we were talking about the speed running strategy that we've put together for day one of Dune Awakening, which gets you out of the South Haga Basin and set up at your main base location as quickly as possible. Check that video out if you haven't already. But today I wanted to talk about what to do after you get to that main base location, because I would argue what you're doing after you establish your main base location is just as important as getting to that location. And the main reason for that being you're gonna want to set up passive water generation as quickly as you possibly can, which is why we're going to be talking about wind traps today. And I'm going to be game planning out exactly what I'm going to do after I get to my base to hopefully unlock wind traps as quickly as possible. Water inside of Dune Awakening is something that you're going to need a constant supply of. You not only need it to stay hydrated, but you need it to craft dozens of things, most importantly being ingots. Iron ingots require 25 milliliters of water a piece to craft. Steel ingots, you're looking at 50 milliliters of water a piece to craft. This is only going to go up the higher tier of metal you're at. And not only that, you need water to craft other things as well, such as silicone blocks. So setting up a passive form of water generation is literally essential to success inside of Dune Awakening. And that's where these wind traps and the whole passive water generation comes into play. Unfortunately, to even craft one single wind trap, you're going to need to get your hands on 90 steel ingots paired with 30 silicone blocks and then 20 of the calibrated cervix, with the 90 steel ingots here being the main part of the equation that we need to solve, mainly because these steel ingots require iron as well as carbon ore and water, of course, in order to craft. I'm getting a bit of some mixed information here. On some sources, I'm reading that it's 4 carbon ore, 1 iron ingot mixed with water in order to craft 1 steel ingot. And then on other sources, I'm reading that it's carbon ore mixed with some version of iron ore mixed with water. However, if we take a look at this, what I'm assuming is official image here of steel with a description that reads that the steel ingot is made by mixing carbon ore with iron ingots. So I'm assuming it's the first recipe here, in that for each steel ingot that we need, we're going to need 4 carbon ores, 1 iron ingot, and 50 milliliters of water. This means in order to craft 90 steel ingots, we're going to need a minimum of 4,500 water. However, if we include the amount of water required to craft 90 iron ingots, we're looking at 450 iron ore and an extra 2,250 water. And we're not even talking about the water required to craft the silicone blocks. Basically, this is a long-winded way of saying that in order to even craft one single wind trap, we are going to have to do a lot of grinding, especially since we're coming at this as a solo player. We're going to want to make sure that we're doing this as efficiently as possible. So let's go ahead and jump on into what the plan is once we get to our main base location. If you remember from the speed run video, check that out if you haven't already. We're going to be setting up our main base location right in this area, or somewhere within this area, you know, somewhere within this general region, just in case we have some competition and we can't quite land this little mountain that we're looking to get. However, once we get to this spot, there's a couple of things that need to happen immediately. First off, we need to get down a 3x3x2 base. You know, we need to fully enclose a 3x3x2 area. And as a solo player, a 3x3x2 might be just a little bit of overkill. However, we do have plans and we kind of do need the area. After we get that laid out, though, we're going to be implementing the mass purification strategy, where we're going to be laying down 2 generators, 1 fabricator, 1 ore refinery, and then 1 chemical refinery. You know, just the baseline stuff that you need for a base to be functioning. And then after that, we're going to be laying down as many blood purification stations as our generators can hold. We may even be possibly adding in a third or fourth generator because I want these blood purification stations to be running constantly. We're going to be doing a bit of a juggling act here when we very first get to the base, because since we're speed running here and we're coming from all the way down in the South Haga Basin and we're getting up here in less than an hour, I would say, we're going to be wildly undergeared. So taking on some of the enemies that are on this hillside here is maybe going to be a little bit more challenging than I would like it to be. It's not going to be impossible, but it's definitely going to be harder than I want it to be, and our chances of surviving is lower, which if we die, we're starting to waste time, and we don't want to waste time here. That's not efficient. So after we place down the base basics, we also need to get all of the ores that we have gathered from the speed run up here, and we need to start smelting those so we can start crafting gear upgrades so we can go at these fights with a little bit more armor on, at least. At the same time that we're smelting those ores and we're crafting upgrades, we need to constantly be filling blood bags so we can be filling our blood purification stations, so we can be getting water, so we can craft steel, so we can lay a wind trap, right? We're going to be doing a bit of a juggling act here for a while, and it's probably going to be more stressful than the entire first hour of the speed run, which is going to be happening live right here on YouTube and on Twitch. I'll have a link to that down in the description if you're interested. But we did make a bit of a change to the initial speed run route to incorporate a unique schematic into the run that is going to greatly help us when it comes to harvesting blood. This, of course, is Caliph's Drinker, which is a unique dagger schematic that has some amazing abilities when it comes to harvesting blood. And if any of you are here from the step-by-step game plan that I made, you will be relieved to hear that we are now, in fact, incorporating this shipwreck into our speed run strategy. This is mainly for the Caliph's Drinker schematic. However, in the previous video that I made, a lot of you guys were pointing out that there are some key resources that come out of these shipwrecks. And because this very first shipwreck in the South Haga Basin is PvE only, you're kind of skipping out on getting some of these resources very easily. And thankfully, slotting this into the speed run is actually incredibly easy. Now, after we accept the trooper quest, we are going to still hit up these mountain lines, picking up any copper on our way, but we're also going to hit up this shipwreck on our way to completing the trooper quest over in this area and then continuing the plan. It does add some chunk of minutes to the whole starting strategy that I have, but it is well worth it in the long run because the dagger schematic that you get out of here is absolutely insane. Slashing enemies with this thing is going to fill up blood bags with each kill, and on top of that, if you have the syringe, you can actually double dip from each enemy that you take down, getting a total of 2,000 milliliters from each one. Again, double from the 1,000 that you would normally get with just the syringe. And since our plan literally revolves on mass purifying tons of blood, this should help us out a ton when it comes to keeping up inventory of our blood bags. There are several of these caves and these encampments and even a lab down here that I'll easily be able to run through. I'll have no shortage of enemies to gather blood from, and I'll basically be able to just constantly run this in a loop, taking out enemies and harvesting resources in a big loop. I could probably even skip out on this testing station because that'll take quite a while, and then just extend the loop down through here and in these encampments. But honestly, the enemy respawns are fairly quick inside of this game. So you may even be able to just like full circle loop it like that, hitting up those 3 quick ones, depositing the blood, and then rinse and repeat. However, we still need a couple of ingredients that I haven't even touched on for these wind traps, that being, of course, carbon to complete the steel, first off, and also flour sand in order to make the silicone blocks. Thankfully, flour sand and silicone blocks are self-explanatory enough. We really just need to spot a flour sand location, and then we can hit it up with our compactor real quick. It should be a bit of a boom, bing, bang type situation when it comes to the flour sand. However, With the carbon ore, that's a little bit different. And I have to do a little bit of speculating here when it comes to the location of the carbon ore. A lot of people are saying that the carbon ore is going to be located in what I'm calling Danub area of Janub. Thankfully, this is located literally just northeast of where I'm planning on setting up my base. So thankfully, we shouldn't have to travel very far in order to get some carbon. And we may actually incorporate some areas in this direct vicinity of Janub into our whole blood harvesting loop, so we can kind of be smashing out some carbon while we're harvesting blood. Still though, at this point, I think we're going to be pretty under geared, and I'm not entirely sure how difficult the NPCs are going to be in this area. So I guess we'll kind of see, and we'll play it by ear when it comes launch day. Again, I'm going to be live on Twitch and right here on YouTube. I'll have a link to the Twitch down in the description. Check that out if you're interested. But being under geared at this point in time isn't really what I'm worried about. I'm more worried about getting these wind traps set up so we can start to have our passive water coming in. This hopefully makes it to where crafting stuff like more steel for more wind traps, or having enough water to craft all the aluminum that we need for our very first ornithopter is stuff that we don't really have to think twice about. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments, and if you guys have any plans for some mass gathering of water, hit that like button. It really helps these videos out in the algorithm. But other than that, I hope you guys all have an amazing day. I'm out.